Ladies and gentlemen, by now you've probably heard the story about how the Trump administration accidentally leaked some messages about the ongoing conflict in Yemen. But what if I told you that those messages weren't accidentally leaked at all, but rather they were intentionally released? Now, I know that might sound crazy, but I promise, if you guys bear with me, you might begin to understand what I'm talking about. So to really understand what's going on here, what do you say we actually take a look at what these leaked messages have to say? Now, these leaked messages start off with Vice President J.D. Vance showing hesitancy to bomb the Houthi terrorists in Yemen because he doesn't want to, quote, bail Europe out again. Then he goes on to say that if they do bomb the Houthi pirates, they should be cautious to not accidentally bomb any Saudi Arabian oil facilities in the region. As things stand right now, the Houthi terrorists have shut down almost all the maritime traffic going in and out of the Red Sea and ultimately the Suez Canal. Now, interestingly, only around 3% of the United States maritime traffic actually goes through the Suez Canal, whereas in comparison, a whopping 40% of Europe's maritime traffic goes through that canal. So what this means is that right now, while the Houthis are shutting down the Red Sea, America isn't really impacted that much. But for Europe, this situation is an absolute economic crisis. So this is what J.D. Vance is talking about when he mentions bailing Europe out. And then, of course, he also mentions taking precautions as to not damage any of Saudi Arabia's oil facilities. And as you all know, President Trump and the Saudis have a reasonably close and friendly relationship. Then, if we move on to the next leaked message, this is where Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth enters the picture. In response to J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth agrees that he's also sick of Europe's freeloading. He even calls it pathetic. Then, he goes on to say that beyond the United States of America, no one in the Western world is even capable of stopping the Houthis, which is why he feels like it's our obligation to do so. Then we see a message from someone initialed SM, presumably Stephen Miller, who says that the United States needs to make it very clear to both Egypt and Europe that if we do end up bombing the Houthis and reopening the Red Sea, we need to be reimbursed for our involvement. Now, folks, that's pretty much the substance of these leaked messages, so we have a lot to unpackage here, but before we do, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But okay, folks, what are the key points that we can extract from these leaked messages? First, we learned that the Trump administration is incredibly critical of Europe, calling them freeloaders guilty of piggybacking on America's defense budget. We also learned that the Trump administration values America's strategic relationship with Saudi Arabia, taking extra care to avoid accidentally striking Saudi Arabian oil infrastructure while attacking the Houthis. And finally, we learned that the United States isn't just going around and doing Europe's and Egypt's dirty work for free. No, rather, they're compensating us for our direct military involvement. So in summary, these leaked messages concretely echo President Trump's America First agenda. As he's publicly said on numerous occasions, the United States is done giving free handouts to other countries. If other countries expect America to police the far reaches of the world, we'd better be getting compensated for it. But okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why would the Trump administration intentionally leak these messages? Well, as we previously talked about, these leaked messages make three big points: our frustration with Europe's sense of entitlement, the value we place on our relationship with Saudi Arabia, and that the United States of America is no longer cleaning up other people's messes without being reimbursed for doing so. Now, for months, years really, Europe has been collectively dragging its feet when it comes to their NATO defense spending. On top of that, over the last several years, the United States of America has actually contributed more to Ukraine's defense than all of Europe has combined. And then, on top of all of that, despite President Trump's very clear message that Europe needs to finally start pitching in their fair share, they've generally been non-receptive to that request, to say the least. So while keeping all of that in mind, these leaked messages further express to Europe just how serious the Trump administration really is about no longer single-handedly subsidizing Europe's defense. Those days are over, and President Trump reasonably expects Europe to start footing some of their own defense bill. Now, these leaked messages also come at a time when China is attempting to build a comprehensive relationship with Saudi Arabia. You see, for decades, the United States of America has maintained several multi-billion-dollar arms agreements with the Saudis, but just earlier this year, in fact, a couple months ago, China attempted to swoop in and undercut our trade agreements, offering to sell the Saudis Chinese-made weapons for pennies on the dollar. On top of that, China is also attempting to negotiate various energy deals with the Saudis in an attempt to box the United States out of the region. So pretty much, right this very moment, China is doing everything it can to break up the strategic relationship that the United States has with Saudi Arabia. So with these leaked messages, we send a very clear message to the Saudis that not only are we willing to clean up the trash that's on their doorstep, but we're also taking care to avoid any Saudi Arabian collateral damage. And then finally, these leaked messages hammer home the narrative that America First really is our country's guiding philosophy as we move forward as a country. The message is this: America is done giving the entire world a free ride at the expense of the American taxpayer. Yeah, we're willing to help take care of some of the terrorists in Yemen, but we're not going to be doing it for free. Especially when you consider that this issue in the Red Sea isn't really America's issue. It doesn't really even impact us that much. So folks, all of that covers why the Trump administration would actually want these messages to be leaked. But now let's consider how all of this actually happened. You see, a group chat was made on the encrypted messaging application called Signal, which included 14 top Trump administration officials and one journalist. The journalist that was accidentally added. Curiously, this journalist is a guy named Jeffrey Goldberg, who's well known for having an insane anti-Trump bias. In fact, this journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, has actually reported on numerous fake stories about President Trump, like the debunked story that Trump called U.S. veterans suckers and losers. So like I said, very curiously, it was this journalist, of all the journalists in the world, that was added to this group chat. And then, on top of that, it was actually Trump's national security advisor, a guy named Mike Waltz, that added Jeffrey Goldberg to the group chat. Now, for those of you that don't know, Mike Waltz isn't just some random idiot. In fact, he's a former Army Special Forces officer who's actually received 4 Bronze Stars for heroic achievement. So folks, if anyone's going to know about operational security, it's going to be Special Forces Officer Mike Waltz. So you know what? Here's my guess as to what happened here. This journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, was intentionally added to this group chat knowing that he'd be unable to help himself from leaking the chat logs. Then, he was spoon-fed a bunch of inconsequential information that, if leaked, would actually just end up pushing President Trump's America First agenda. Because now, as a consequence of these leaks, Europe has been put on notice that their days of freeloading are over, Saudi Arabia has been reassured that we have their backs and value our strategic relationship with them, and most importantly, the entire world knows we mean business when we say America First. But I'll tell you the truth, regardless of what really happened here, I've given you my opinion, of course, none of this actually makes the Trump administration look bad. In fact, I think it actually makes them look good, because now we know for a fact that behind closed doors in their private conversations, they're just as America First as they are out in the open. But everyone, I understand this is a big topic, so I want to know what you guys have to say about it. So everyone, right now, go down in the comment section and let me know what you think. And while you guys are doing that, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down in the comment section, pinned up at the top, and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for this video. So like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Please like the video if you liked the video. Thank you all very much for tuning in today. And of course, as always, stay safe.